Welcome back to another episode of Caps Off by the Game Day Fantasy Week 2 recaps episode. What's up, Leap?
It's a sad day.
Why is it a sad day?
The Chubb injury, man.
Oh my God, the Chubb one. Fuck it.
I mean, he's consistently been one of those top running backs every single year, and you just like watching those guys the same way. Even if you don't have a Derrick Henry or a Chubb or one of those guys that do it year in and year out, you hate to see that.
Yeah, it's one of those injuries that you obviously wasted one of your first two picks really on Nick Chubb, but then you have an opportunity if you lose Nick Chubb to potentially get another replacement at RB1. Hopefully you had Jerome Ford as your backup, but I don't think many people, would have that. I do want to talk about Jerome Ford and really just what this means for the running back landscape or just fantasy landscape in general. But before we do jump into it, if you want to play any DFS games, make sure to go to thegameday.com/promotions. You can get the best underdog promos, best DraftKings promo. So make sure to check those out. We got some really good stuff on the website. Also, submit your fantasy questions. All right. If you have any questions about week 2, waiver wire, anything, we'll get to them at the end of the show. So make sure to submit those and we'll get to them. I see all the comments. Yeah, Lipe, obviously you talked about Nick Chubb. Like, what is the overall impact of Nick Chubb's injury in your opinion?
Well, I mean, like we said, he's one of those top finishing guys every single year. So, I mean, you draft him knowing that you're going to have a guy that's going to finish as an RB1. It's almost certain, not only because of his skill set, but because of how the Browns run the ball. That's their offense. Yep. They go crazy. Even when they had the 2-back set with him and Kareem Hunt, you still knew both of them were going to get theirs. And so one thing you can be confident in is that their offense isn't necessarily going to change. Their run game is still going to be heavy.
Right.
And so you look at Jerome Ford and hopefully you had him. Maybe you don't. Obviously, there's conflicting theories about whether you had the handcuffs to your own guys or whether you get somebody else's handcuff. If you don't, you kind of mentioned, we talked about this off the screen a little bit, but there's a couple guys that have been elite in the recent past that are unsigned. And maybe you're hoping, maybe you get one of those guys right now and you're hoping that the Browns or another team that needs a running back like the Ravens or even the Colts in the short term, at least, sign one of those guys. So who are some of those guys?
So those guys would be like a Kareem Hunt or a Leonard Fournette. Now, you mentioned it off the pod. Kareem Hunt allegedly looks super slow.
That's what they said in the offseason. So I believe it because why is he not signed yet?
Yeah.
Even a guy like Zeke was signed, and we know that he's slow.
Right. But we also know Bill Belichick doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He might be senile these days.
True.
Yeah, looking at the Jerome Ford thing, I think he's a guy that could be, I would start him probably as a low end or a high end RB2. To me, that's his outlook right this second, with the upside to literally be obviously a high end RB1.
Yeah.
He has, knowing what Nick Chubb brought to the table, knowing what that offensive line is, knowing what if Deshaun can get back to 70% of that offense is going to be flowing. He is, a league winner type of potential. But when it comes to FAAB, and we're going to get to waiver wire pickups, is there a certain amount that you'd be not willing to spend? That what's your limit on spending for Jerome Ford? Because the way I kind of look at the Jerome Ford situation and, allocating, resources to it is I'm probably spending all my fucking money if I have to. If I need a running back, especially if I just lost Nick Chubb, you're spending all those dollars.
Yeah, it depends on need. How bad do you need them? And like you said, if you're in a situation right now, if you have Nick Chubb, you need to fill that spot. And this is a running back in a situation that has very high upside and a safe floor because of how the Browns play the fucking game. They love running the ball. And so, you're shelling out more than other managers. That's how FAAB is, right? Guys have they put different value on different guys depending on what their team needs. If you really need them, then you're going to go all out. And obviously what that all out means to you might be different than all out to somebody else. I don't I like going and seeing what the experts talk. A lot of times they're 10% is okay for this guy, 15 here, 3% here.
Right.
But you're definitely on the higher end. However you kind of go about it in general, you're on the higher end of that percentage to go get a guy like him because it's going to shore up your situation immediately.
Yeah, I agree. Spend the fucking money if you want. If you don't want to spend that money and you luck out, obviously, Kareem Hunt in Leonard Fournette, as we mentioned, is a guy. We're going to go through waiver wire targets at the end of this episode. I do see some of the comments, so we'll get to them. But I do have an absurd fantasy stat that I wanted to bring up because it is shouting out your team. The Cowboys currently have the third most fantasy points out of anyone, any player.
Cowboys defense.
This year. Cowboys defense, yeah. First is Tyreek. Second is Puka Nacua. Third is the Cowboys defense. It's the most in in the first 2 games by any defense since 1970, since the NFL merger.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot of points. I mean, the one thing they're going to do is make sure the other team turns the ball over, and they've been able to, like in the first game, they had 2 touchdowns, the defense special teams. This last game, they almost had one. Micah ended up being touched, but he had one that he returned to the house too. So they're elite. But one thing to keep in mind is that they haven't played a good offense yet. They played the Giants. Yes, the Giants still had Saquon. The Giants just got worse because they lost Saquon for 3 weeks. That's another thing.
Yeah.
But before we even get into that, they played a Giants team that offensively you're not scared of them. And in the Jets team without Aaron Rodgers, you're also not scared of them. And they gave up a big play to Garrett Wilson on a touchdown, like one mistake they made all game. And so like, you're set with this defense. It's one of those where like, you're probably not shopping for other defenses like throughout the season, but you can't expect them to do what they just did. Like what they put up this past week. I mean, against the Giants, they put up like fucking 40 points or some shit, like 30 something.
They might have still had like 16 or something.
They're not going to do that. Like, so don't expect that. Don't go, you know what I mean? Like, you probably won if you had them, but they're going to give you like the baseline of like 10 or whatever you think it might be. Like, they're going to give you 10 and 15. Like, it's going to be good on a week-to-week basis.
What's interesting about the Cowboys defense right now is you might have players in your league that would actually trade for a defense knowing that they can make the difference.
Which is stupid as fuck.
Beyond stupid. But I had in last year, in one of my leagues last year, someone wanted the Cowboys defense specifically added in on like a 3-for-2, 4-for-2 type of trade. So I don't know. If you're going to make a trade this week and you have the Cowboys defense, throw them in. Fuck it. It's a defense. Yeah. See if that can sweeten the pot. So see if how much they'll react. I wouldn't be surprised if some people are like, I want that. And also bring up the stats. Show them the video. Cowboys 3rd most points in fantasy right now after the first 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, we like talking about the sell high guys. But buy low, sell high, whatever. So you look at like what just happened like recently, and if guys are balling the fuck out, then you think about like, can they maintain this the rest of the season? Like, we know the Cowboys won't that they can play well, but they're not maintaining these points that they've been putting up. They're not going to play another offense as bad as the Giants are just collectively, like, going forward. They're going to play some bad teams. They got the Cardinals this week. This is a nice matchup coming up. But then you got the Eagles twice. You got the Niners. You got other teams. Like, you got a tough schedule. You're playing the AFC East. You're playing the Dolphins. You're playing the Bills. It's going to get worse. Like, they're not going to score as many points. So if you can use them to fool another guy that
maybe even wait a week. Maybe even wait till after the Cardinals.
Well, I still don't think they're going to do it. Like,
they're not going to repeat it.
I don't think they're going to repeat even with the Cardinals. So right now, man, and try to go get that like, big time flashy player and be like, yo, I got the Cowboys in number 3 defense, like you said. Yep. Bring up the stats that Adam said, because Adam's a smart guy and he definitely knew that.
Yeah, I mean, they have the 3rd most points. It's the most in the first 2 games by any defense since 1970. But I want to move into the next thing I want to talk about, which is the wide receiver 2 in fantasy right now.
Okay.
Do you know who that is?
Fuck. Well, we talked about total yardage before, which would kind of translate. Wide receiver 2 in fantasy, Puka Nacua.
Puka Nacua.
Which you called like 2 weeks ago.
Before week 1 hit, I said add Puka Nacua. I might just be him. Puka Nacua is a guy.
Confirmed.
I might. I feel like we need confirmation sometimes.
I just confirmed.
Oh.
Or him.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's so sweet of you. Puka's averaging 26 points a game right now. The question is, what's his rest of season outlook? Now, factor in Cooper Kupp, and then factor in if Cooper Kupp, doesn't come back. Like, what is your rest of season outlook for Puka Nacua?
Well, Cooper Kupp doesn't come back. He's for sure a wide receiver 1. We had a discussion earlier. Is he a wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season, being like top 12 wide receiver by the end of the year? And I think even with Kupp coming back, he probably is on the low side of that. If Kupp ends up being out longer, then he's probably like a mid wide receiver. Like, he's probably like, he might finish as a 5, 6, 7 guy because of the target share. Like you mentioned yesterday, and this is probably another fun stat for you to even mention, but the Matthew Stafford has played with top tier receivers. Like, he's made a receiver that he's played with a top tier guy, like a wide receiver 1 guy, so many times. I mean, you think about Calvin Johnson's, those ones are obvious. The Cooper Kupps are obvious, but even guys like, you remember
Marvin Jones was on that list.
Marvin Jones. What's the other? Kenny Galladay.
Kenny Galladay was on that list.
Guys like that who like fucking suck when they stop playing with him.
Yep.
But they're nice with him. So Puka's another guy that's benefiting from that right now. And I think even if Kupp comes back, this offense is good because McVay's a genius offensively, and they're able to utilize Stafford in a good way too. But it's not just Stafford; it's the offense. So Kupp is still going to get his. Don't get me wrong, but Puka's going to get fed still.
Yep.
And he's proven, like, the thing about about McVay's offense, you don't need something crazy. Like you don't need a super alpha Justin Jefferson in that offense.
Yep.
McVay will scheme you open.
Absolutely.
And you got to understand how to beat zone defenses and where to sit, when to come in, like option routes. Are you coming in? Are you coming out? Are you sitting? Like if you understand that as a receiver, which is
it's clear that Puka might.
elite,
Yeah.
he gets it. And so he's going to get fed.
Yeah.
I like him.
Yeah. I mean, look, when I look at the impact, first of all, if you have Cooper Kupp, this is actually best case scenario because it's clear that the team is remaining competitive. Not that we thought that they were going to fold, but it's showing that Matthew Stafford is somewhat bought into even working with these younger receivers, even Tutu Atwell looks good. So you have faith if you're Cooper Kupp. He comes back. If you have Kupp, it actually helps because you're not going to have people blanketing him. You're going to have some, attention on not only Tutu, but on Puka. If Cooper Kupp,
great names,
Tutu and Puka. I mean, it's a hell of a name. But if Cooper Kupp doesn't end up coming back, obviously I agree. Puka Nacua is a wide receiver 1 the rest of the season. He has to be. He's getting the targets. However, which is something I always like to do, throw some feelers out there. See if someone is willing to buy Puka for so high, right? If it's Puka Nacua, you might be able to get Puka and even throw in maybe like a George Pickens potentially for like a Jamar Chase. You might have someone really overreact, like super overreact. I saw a crazy trade on Twitter. It was like Jamar Chase and Tony Pollard for Mark Andrews, James Cook, and like one other guy that is not warranted at all. I'd rather have Jamar Chase over Puka Nacua, right? So throw some feelers out there, see what you can get. I think, with Cooper Kupp coming back, he's going to be fine. If anything, he's just a wide receiver too. And no matter what, you've gotten the best return because you picked him up on the waiver wires.
Well, yeah, I mean, the return is fucking insane. Every year there's some of those guys, right? Yep. But I have to ask you a question though. I mean, we seen with the Bengals, and you mentioned like Jamar Chase, right? I mean, fuck yeah, you definitely take that. But with Joe Burrow being hurt and that offense not looking the same way that maybe it's looked in the past, and let's say Kupp doesn't come back, it's closer. It starts to get a little bit closer there because at least like Puka getting his isn't necessarily dependent on like his natural ability. It's on that offense, and he's going to get fed. Whereas Jamar Chase, like we talked about yesterday on the regular podcast, they're just hoping that
he catches. He makes a play on the ball.
He makes a play on the ball. Like it's just such a lack of creativity. So would you even who would you take rest of the season? Let's say Kupp doesn't play and you got Puka that's going to be doing this every single week. He's going to be targeted like 12 to 15 times, or Chase when you're not really sure about this offense?
That's a really good question. Hey, at first glance, it's like, are you out of your fucking mind that you're going to take?
Yeah, when you start thinking about it, it's like it actually
because it's
the floor is higher for Puka.
So much higher because of the targets. It's manufactured touches. Now with Jamar, like if this team does go down 0-3, they shouldn't. They should be fine. I think I'll still prefer Jamar right now. Just because this type of shit happens in fantasy. Obviously,
people overreact.
We're going to overreact. However, if you were to be like, I want Puka right now because he's going to get you wins currently, then I'm also not opposed to it. That's all I'll say. But I do want to move to one other person on the Rams, which is Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams right now had 28 points this week. He's averaging 22.7 a game. Cam Akers is currently on the trade block. He was a healthy scratch last week. Clearly, they want him out of the building. And also, Kyren Williams is clearly the guy currently. He's also the RB2 on the year right now. What does the rest of season outlook look like for Kyren Williams? Because if Cam Akers is gone, here's what I'll say. It wouldn't shock me if I saw Cam Akers for Jonathan Taylor with some picks swap. And that's what the only worry I have about Kyren. After that, I still, he's a set it and forget it currently. So I'm curious to know your thoughts.
You're talking about fantasy with Jonathan Taylor.
No, I'm talking in real life.
Oh.
Right? So the question is, what's the rest of season outlook for Kyren Williams?
Okay.
We'll start there.
Well, I mean,
he's the RB2 this year, right now.
That's pretty fucking dope.
Pretty fucking good. He's averaging 22 a game.
Yeah, and that's even with Akers getting like what 15 carries. Like he got some touches week 1. Now last week obviously he was inactive, but the Rams offense, we've seen them have success with running backs. Todd Gurley, like that's the last like fucking superstar they've had. We thought Cam Akers had that possibility. I think he would have probably done it if it wasn't for his Achilles that he hurt a couple, a year ago, a couple years ago, whatever it was. And so, well, one thing we know about McVay is that like we talked about with Puka, he's gonna scheme up his guys, and running back is no different. They like having a running back that gets the job done. Even like last year, like with like Henderson, Darrell Henderson, I believe his name.
Yeah, Henderson, yeah.
Did his thing like when they gave him the opportunity. The only thing I worry about the Rams is like I feel like you never know the next guy that comes into the backfield. That might be like somebody that comes like week 6 that's going to be balling out, and now Williams is going to be getting less touches. But I feel confident in that. Like Akers they're openly shopping him. Akers, I don't know if he's going to play another snap for the Rams. They're openly shopping him. So because of that, and because of that Rams offense, Williams is fucking nice. He's RB2 right now. He's not going to finish as that, but as an RB1, just overall as a top 12 running back by the end of the year, assuming that Akers is actually gone and they
don't add anyone else.
They don't really add anyone else.
In the range.
I think they're totally okay, and they shouldn't add anyone else because they're not in a position to do that right now. Like they're not necessarily competing for a Super Bowl. I think they are maybe competing for a playoff spot because they have that competitive juice in them. But I think they're the type of team that's going to roll with their guys.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I think Kyren Williams is a potential league winner as of right now, right? Those are two guys on the Rams, potential league winners. Look at other teams as well, right? That are very similar to the Rams, where like look at the Cardinals, where you don't know who really that wide receiver 1 is. People think it's going to be a Hollywood Brown, could be a Rondale Moore, but I'm blanking on his first name, like something Wilson. Right? Like he had a decent game.
Right. Yeah.
Like you don't know. So just look at these bad teams and who could be that wide receiver 1, which brings me to my next point of Nico Collins. So Nico Collins is a guy right now who's had 27 points last week, right? Yeah. Nico Collins, you probably got in like the 10th round, around that range.
Yeah.
These are 2 people, even 3 from Puka, Kyren, and Nico that could be league winners. And the reason that I say that is because league winners happen based off of value. So value that you would have got with Nico Collins super late in the draft, at minimum is a wide receiver 3. And he's not even playing the bulk load of snaps right now. So Nico Collins, what's your rest of the season now? Like, what are your thoughts on Nico?
Dude, I love Nico. We've all been waiting on Nico. Even last year, we were waiting on Nico. Like, there was a lot of hype before last year. And by a lot of hype, I don't mean nobody ever expected him to be like a top, like 30 receiver, but maybe at the back end of that. But it's finally kind of coming into play. He's a big body. They lost Brandon Cooks this offseason, so it was like it's his time to shine, and you get CJ Stroud in there. And so the fact that he's producing now with a rookie quarterback who's looking like
pretty good.
This past week was good. He aired it out a lot. The numbers were up and everything. Like I think 3 touchdowns, 300 plus yards. Nico Collins is because he's the only guy in that offense, and they don't have the type of like the Miko Ryans' head coach. They're not scheming up guys necessarily like the Rams are, where I think like anybody could feast in that system. Nico Collins is the best player. They're the best receiving threat on that offense, and he's going to get his regardless. I think he's going to be a security blanket all year for CJ Stroud, and that's what these young quarterbacks like, is that big receiver that you can rely on. Like when Cam Newton was a rookie, he would rely on Kelvin Benjamin. And a big, you like that?
Good
big receiver, not the most talented guy in the world, but like these big guys that can just box out defenders, whether you're in the red zone or that can run a slant and he's just going to get inside of that corner.
Yeah.
The young quarterbacks love that shit. And Nico we've been waiting on it, and he has the ability. I love him for the rest of the season. You mentioned wide receiver 3. I'm
saying at minimum.
I sat him actually this past week. I mean, I'm in between guys like Zay Flowers, Mike Evans, which I sat Mike Evans. I started Zay. But Nico now is like, I really got to look at it because he's just in a situation where we know he's going to get his targets. And whereas the other guys, like, you still don't, I don't know, you're still not super confident about either Mike or Zay. So if you're in a situation like that, are you probably starting Nico over those other guys, even though he's probably less talented than those guys, but he might be in a situation where he's just going to get fed more?
I'll say this. Zay better offense. Mike Evans, 100 plus, had a fantastic game. Bucks look, are 2-0. He looks good. The thing with Nico that I think is the biggest point is the Texans are going to be playing from behind. So no matter what, he is going to be getting opportunities. Whereas Zay Flowers, you're hoping early on is someone that gets, 4 targets in that first half so that at least he has chances to make some plays. Mike Evans, very similar to Nico, where like they're not going to be playing from behind, but they very easily could because of Baker and if he's shitting the bed. And Mike is going to be, the benefactor of those deep balls. So for me, Nico Collins, I'd say at minimum, he's a wide receiver 3. He can move up easily. I'd probably start him over Zay Flowers right now. And I have both.
Yeah. See, that week 1 Zay Flowers performance really hyped me up because of the manufactured touches.
Yep. But no Mark Andrews.
Right.
So that factors into it. And
as well.
But OBJ is also hurt. So
there's a lot of things going on there. There's a lot of
fucking things.
But I like Nico a lot. It makes me so happy to see him balling out because this is his 3rd year, I believe. And his rookie year, there was hype about him in training camp.
Yeah,
we didn't see shit.
He made some plays.
Last year, there was hype about him, and we still didn't see too much. Obviously, a terrible situation. Now we're finally starting to see him. So I love him. And like you say, if his floor is wide receiver 3, that's fucking awesome, and it's only going to go up.
Yep. Another guy I want to talk about, Kirk Cousins, currently the quarterback 1 in fantasy right now, 23 a game. Now, I don't think he's going to last. I don't. And I think you're going to see that list shift over the next 3 weeks because you're going to have guys, and I want to go through the top 10 afterwards, but guys like the Jalen Hurts, the Josh Allens of the world.
Yeah, they'll even out.
Mahomes, Herbert, like law of averages will end up coming into play. But the rest of the season outlook for Kirk, like, you have no reason.
The schedule? Like, I like Kirk, bro. Kirk is so funny. I like rooting for Kirk, but it's just when you start rooting for him, he's gonna put up a dud on Monday Night Football, put up like 2 points.
The only time you want to bench him might be on Monday nights, because Thursday nights he just proved that he could still put up 300+ yards.
Yeah, or that Eagles defense.
Like right now, for me, you got to start Kirk Cousins, unless like he's going.
Oh yeah, I agree. Totally.
Unless you got the Lamars of the world or the Josh Allen, anyone with rushing upside. But like if it's Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins, I'm going Kirk Cousins right now. These are the top 10 quarterbacks in fantasy currently. PPR, of course. Kirk Cousins, well, not that it applies to quarterbacks, but Kirk Cousins, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Mahomes at 4, Russ at 5, which is a big one. Tua at 6, Mac Jones at 7, Anthony Richardson at 8, Jalen Hurts at 9, and Daniel Jones at 10. The biggest thing that stands out to me, 3 of these guys, really 4 with Daniel Jones, all later than probably the 8th round in fantasy.
Yeah, but that's, I think, why the fantasy community is always shouting out like these rushing quarterbacks. Like Daniel Jones isn't a top 10 quarterback, isn't close to a top 10 quarterback, but his rushing upside will get him there. I'm surprised about some guys that aren't up there. Obviously, Justin Fields, we talked about him a bit. We haven't talked about him too much on the fantasy episodes, but just like fucking ass, right? Like just bad. Even with the rushing upside, he's not getting it, and he's really trying to go through his I don't know what the hell's going on there. But some guys that are surprising though, Jordan Love is awesome. I love to see him. I love to see him up there because not only is he dynamic, gets it done with his feet, another guy with rushing upside, but he's throwing it so well and he just feels
very effortless.
He feels like a guy that was groomed under Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
I wonder why, like it really makes sense to see him succeed after Rodgers had left.
Yeah. I mean, look, you got to look at, Jordan Love, Daniel Jones, these guys that are in the top 10 quarterbacks in fantasy are not necessarily people that are going to stay that high, but you can get production week over week from them, right? Yeah. So maybe it was the best strategy in these first couple of weeks to not draft one of these quarterbacks so high, because the Joe Burrows, the Lamar Jacksons, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, like even Mahomes, like hasn't really done anything. But I think it's going to change. We'll see, but it's really interesting. But it's just as interesting, really, as the top 10 running backs. These are the top 10 running backs in PPR currently, in order, 1 through 10. You got CMC, Kyren Williams, Bijan, Tony Pollard. Oh, excuse me. Brian Robinson is number 3.
Oh, wow.
Tony Pollard's 4. Bijan's 5. Okay. Raheem Mostert 6. Saquon 7. Derrick Henry 8. James Cook 9. Ramondre Stevenson 10. The number one thing I see on this list, again, these top-end running backs. Obviously, Chubb's hurt, but the only people up there are CMC and Bijan. I guess Derrick Henry and Saquon, I take it back. But yeah, man, it's an interesting list. Brian Robinson is looking like a potential league winner. Obviously, it's only been 2 weeks. James Cook is another one. The value, I said it earlier in the episode. Yeah. You get guys later in the draft that can perform at a top 12 level. Yeah, you're gonna probably win your league. Or you're gonna at least make a really deep playoff run.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to pull up a tweet here. I actually, one of those guys, Tony Pollard. Go Cowboys.
Go Cowboys. Cowboys.
He had a good tweet about Pollard. You said he was RB4?
Yes.
Right now? Yeah, so just the touches. I believe it's the most touches the Cowboys have given to a running back since DeMarco Murray. I believe that was the tweet as I look for it here. But essentially, like, he's on pace for like 400-something plus touches this year. Crazy. Now, obviously, like, he got targeted like 8 times. Here we go. Tony Pollard's on pace for 425 touches. Jesus. Only DeMarco Murray has surpassed that number over the last 15 years. So not only, like, forget Cowboys running back, it just happens to be a Cowboy, but in the past 15 years, only one running back has surpassed that amount of touches. So he has them as his RB2 for the rest of the season, right behind Christian McCaffrey. So I think
that's fair. That's totally fair.
That's pretty insane considering you could have gotten him in the second round. Like in my drafts, he really went in the back of the first, but he was kind of going anywhere there. So that's good value there. But I just think that's insane to think about that. Like, we love touches for a running back. It's what makes us so high on a lot of these guys. What worried me about Pollard beforehand was, like, can he handle these touches? He's obviously handling them.
Yeah.
So another guy that we've had on the podcast for us, he said
Tony Pollard was the RB1. Yeah.
He can finish as an RB1. He's a league winner. So pretty fucking crazy to see.
Yeah, it's wild. And then before we jump into waiver wire breakdowns, I got one more stat I want to go over. I want to go over the top 10 wide receivers in fantasy PPR currently. Obviously, we did quarterbacks, we did running backs. I want to go over the wide receivers. Anyone that stands out to you specifically: 1 Tyreek, 2 Puka Nacua, 3 Jettis, 4 Mike Evans, 5 Keenan Allen, 6 Nico Collins, 7 your boy Devontae Smith, 8 Brandon Ayuk, 9 Stephon Diggs, 10 Michael Pittman Jr. Wild list.
Yeah.
Obviously there's going to be a lot of movement there. But again, Devontae Smith outperforming A.J. Brown, could have got him 2 rounds, 3 rounds later.
Yep.
Michael Pittman, late pick. Maybe around the 4 to 6 range, depending on, because people thought Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
And he's clearly, the target share is drastically different with Shane Steichen as the head coach. And then obviously Puka's there, but like Nico Collins, a guy, right? Playing from behind. Brandon Cooks, I think early on last year, was a top 24 wide receiver. It feels very similar with Nico Collins. It makes sense.
Yes, I mean, it's pretty like him. Like, you wish you could go back and redraft and take some of these guys maybe at like around ahead of where they went, because you knew they're still way undervalued at that point, even if they went rounds ahead. But it's what it is right now. I still think a lot of these, just like quarterbacks, are gonna kind of shake out, and some of these guys are gonna fall out. Some of the guys that are more chalk are gonna get up there. The AJ Browns of the world. Even though, I've always said Devontae better, but it's kind of proven right now.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like it.
Looks insane.
He looks like it, yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, like this stuff's gonna happen. I think Mike Evans will probably fall a little bit more. It's only been 2 weeks, so we can't overreact to like a couple guys huge weeks. We were talking about this on the other podcast. Rashid Shaheed, most yards. He's a
most all-purpose yards in the NFL right now.
And
he's the wide receiver 3 for the Saints.
So how's he not on that list? I wonder why. That's weird.
He's not on that list.
That's interesting.
Maybe he has rushes. Maybe
he has some rushes and like return yards or some shit.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Like he's gonna drop out of that top 10 list. Like, he's not gonna be there. So through 2 weeks, that's what we got. I think a couple of those guys are gonna stay up there. The Jeffersons of the world. Who's gonna get up there? Jamar Chase. He's not there right now.
Yep. Other guys, that might take some time though.
Look, it's been 2 weeks. Jamar Chase is capable of having a 250-yard receiving game.
It's true.
And that's gonna happen. Waddle's not up there, and right now he could get up there. CD's not up there. Did you say CD?
CD is not there. CD's 11.
Close.
Another sleeper, like right there, Josh Reynolds.
That's cool.
Josh Reynolds, and which brings me to my next point of our last thing before we start looking at some questions is waiver wire breakdowns, right? Okay. Josh Reynolds is a guy that is didn't I just say he's like wide receiver 12 on the season currently? Now, I'm not saying that he's some guy that's like I don't think rest of season he's a top 24 wide receiver. But I will look at the situation and say, okay, no Jameson Williams. Teams are going to be looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Of course.
Josh Reynolds is a guy like I would spend 10 to 15% of my budget right now on Josh Reynolds. I don't mind that. He's a guy that has performed. He's going to consistently see those targets. He's scoring touchdowns. Like, Amon-Ra's never been a guy that really scores that many touchdowns. Someone else is going to be the benefactor of that. And now you don't have David Montgomery.
Yeah.
Josh Reynolds is someone I would definitely look at on the waiver wire.
And that offense puts up points, bro. Yep. Like the way they did last year, they're doing it this year. And Williams is out for the year, Jameson Williams?
No, 6 games.
Oh, 6
suspension.
Games? Yeah,
but we didn't see it last year with Jameson Williams. Who is that wide receiver too? That's up for grabs. So,
but Goff likes throwing the ball, and that offense likes throwing it. And I mean, I fuck with it. I like it.
I'm going to name a couple other players that I think people should target on the wire. Just any specific ones that stand out that you say, deserve all that love. Obviously, the biggest one is Jerome Ford. If you're just joining us on TikTok or on YouTube, Jerome Ford, backup for the Browns. Every fantasy outlet's going to tell you to spend your money on him. I have no issues, especially if you need a running back, especially if you had Nick Chubb, spending all your fab on that man, because he is going to step into an RB1 load. Even if Kareem Hunt you were to sign there, I just don't see it. Jerome Ford looked good last night. I don't see anyone taking that over. I have no issue spending all that fab. So go for it. Jerome Ford, priority waiver wire ad this week.
Oh, yeah.
The other guys I'm targeting, Zach Moss looked great, obviously, and he had some receptions. Zach Moss is a big guy that should be available on the wire. Don't love the offense there. Don't know what's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor. I do think he gets traded, but Zach Moss is a big one. Tutu Atwell, another good one, obviously still available. Tank Dell, Now, granted, we talked about Nico Collins, but Tank Dell's looked good in some limited snaps. And then 4 other guys I think that are beneficial to target. Jaden Reed, wide receiver right now for the Packers. Christian Watson's been out. He's been the one that's been dominating targets. So I would look at Jaden Reed. Jalen Hyatt. We had Scotty the King on last week on our Thursday episode. And Jalen Hyatt, I think he only had maybe like 2 or 3 receptions. But he did say Jalen Hyatt in a couple weeks is going to be the priority ad on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
And that's because the Giants are going to need a playmaker to have the ball in his hands. That he was a Biletnikoff winner. You know, you could probably get Jalen Hyatt right now without someone actually trying to add him. He might be a priority ad next week or the following week. So, and then 2 others, Zach Ertz, if you need a tight end, and then Jordan Love, obviously we talked about.
Right.
Some guys. Anyone specifically stands out?
So, I mean, all those guys I really like. I think you mentioned like some of the top guys. Like you said, I mean, Jerome Ford. I mean, Josh Reynolds. We were talking about. He's on my waiver wire here in one of my home leagues. So, I mean, that's dope. We had mentioned him slightly. You didn't mention him just now, but Rashid Shaheed's still available in my league, and he might be in yours as well. I mean, the targets are high. 5 or 6 in the first game, 4 in the second. They're gonna throw the ball, and Derek Carr, that's what he does, and he's gonna air it out to his guys. So you got, Rashid getting 89 yards in one game, 63 in the second. He scored in the first. Something to keep an eye on. Obviously, like, you're not starting him yet. Another guy, though, I think I actually really like it a little bit deeper down is Josh Downs. Now, drafted by ND, a pure receiver, like great route runner. I think actually Anthony Richardson being hurt, if he does miss more time. Do we know the outlook on Richardson right now, injury-wise?
No.
Minshew being in at quarterback actually helps because he's going to be able to fit the ball in these tight windows. And not even tight windows, just like he's more of a pocket passer. So he's going to – good route runners actually thrive with pocket passers. And so I think Josh Downs is going to be a guy that can really thrive. He's seen his targets. Week 1, he saw 7. Week 2, he saw 5. We know rookie receivers, like, that's one of the positions that take a little bit longer to get acclimated in.
Right. And
the fact that he's getting his targets already speaks to, like, how much trust this guy has, or the team has in him. 12 targets over 2 weeks. So Josh Downs is a deeper cut. You could get him probably early now before if he does start popping off eventually. Totally.
All right. Well, that's all the shit that I have. We can answer some comments, and I'll throw it to you before we end. As a reminder, go to thegameday.com/promotions if you're into DFS. We got some really good underdog promos, DraftKings promos, sleeper, anything, all the above. So make sure to go to thegameday.com/promotions. Also, as a reminder, caps off. We have episodes every single day of the week except for Saturday. But Thursday, we also do another fantasy live. We'll also do a live 5 o'clock on Thursday. Start sits. I see a lot of questions about start sits. So set your reminders for Thursday night at 5 o'clock to do a start sit. And then also on Sundays, we do our watch along and pregame show. So that goes from 12 to 5 o'clock during the 1 o'clock slate. Come hang out with us. Come shoot the shit. Question for you. Thoughts on Jamar Chase and A.J. Brown? That's from Brendan Wentland 03. Obviously, we talked Jamar a little bit, but rest of season, quick thoughts on Jamar.
You're still starting both of them. Jamar's going to be just fine. It's funny. They both have really good wide receiver 2s on that team that could benefit more than them some weeks. But I'm still starting both of them. I mean, you mentioned you're always talking about, like, what can I trade these guys for? Jamar Chase, you're probably not looking to trade him right now because other guys might be hesitant, but as soon as he pops off this upcoming week, or whenever he does, then maybe that's somebody you could consider trading. But regardless, like, as far as like what you have with them right now, I'm starting both of them. I'm not really thinking about it.
Junior Albizero said, should I drop Breece Hall for someone on the waiver wire?
No. What? Would you even think
No,
about that?
not at all. Not at all.
He had a terrible game against a great defense. Like, that's going to happen. Breece, what we saw in week 1 was impressive against a Bills defense that's like mid, and he's going to face more of those mid defenses. I like Breece a lot. I like whether you start him as a consideration, maybe a flex play or something like that. I mean, I think he has like RB2 probably upside, maybe low end RB1, but you're not dropping Breece. I mean, if there's a Jets fan in your league, maybe try to trade him.
Question for you though. Breece Hall rest of season. If it's drop Breece Hall for Jerome Ford.
Oh, it was that the question?
No. I'm throwing a little wrench in it. If it's drop Breece Hall for Jerome Ford,
there's another guy you could drop for Jerome Ford. Like, don't drop Breece. Like,
drop your kicker. I'd rather you rock no kicker and try and trade one.
Don't drop Breece. Like, Breece is only going to get better. That was his first game back from injury against the Bills, and you saw what he did. He just went into a fucking brick wall in Dallas. They were playing from behind. They're not going to run the ball with him. Like, that was a bad game script for him. We love talking about game scripts. Yep. Bad game script. He's going to bounce back. Please don't drop him. If anything, trade him to a Jets fan. They're going to overvalue him and go get something else.
2 last questions for you before we sign off. One is from Max. He said, I just traded Kyren Williams, James Cook, Cortland Sutton for Austin Eckler, Terry McLaurin, and Jahan Dotson. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so he traded Kyren
Williams, James Cook, Cortland Sutton for Eckler, Terry McLaurin, and Jahan Dotson.
See, you start throwing multiple names, and it's a lot for me. I like surface overall. I'm like, okay,
Austin Eckler's the
you
guy
got
that
bigger
stands
names.
out. Yeah,
You got Eckler, and the second receiver, who was it?
It was Terry McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin. You got the names for sure. Like you won that end of it. Like if it was before the season, like clearly that you won this trade. But I mean, Kyren Williams, like we said, he has so much upside.
So lean there, yeah.
You lean that way, like you already pulled a trade, so it's whatever. I think it's fine. If you're addressing needs and like that's what you had to do, then totally more power to you. Sutton, I think, is like at this point, like whatever.
The other thing that worries me is like you traded for Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Those are two wide
weird.
receivers on the same team. You're almost banking on one. They're limiting the upside either. So but hey, it happened. Keep coming back. Keep coming back to these episodes, though. We could help you build a contender.
Well, Eckler healthy is good. It's really good. So
yes,
good
but he's not healthy.
Yeah, fuck.
Last question, real quick. This guy NFL guy traded Kenneth Walker, Zach Moss, and Dallas Goedert for Travis Kelce and Devon A-Chain. Good trade or no?
Kenneth Walker, Zach Moss, and who?
And Dallas Goedert for Kelce and A-Chain.
I don't like that. Walker's good, right? Like Walker's really good. I think he's RB2 flex guy at least. And then Zach Moss was the second guy.
Zach Moss, Dallas Goedert.
Dallas Goedert is a tight end one. He had a terrible week 1. Week 2, he was better. And he's only going to keep getting better. The Eagles' offense have regressed a bit. They're going to get better. I think they're going to regress to the mean, as like Adams like to say. And so those are like two, like for me, must starts and Walker and Goddard. And you're giving it for who?
Kelce and Devon A-Chain.
Kelce's a must start. Obviously, the positional advantage is huge, but A-Chain, you're not starting.
Yeah, you don't know what A-Chain is, right?
I'm keeping the first. I'm keeping the first, bro. Honestly, did he already make that trade?
I think so.
If you already made that trade, I'm sorry. I wouldn't have done it.
It's all right.
But Kelce, you can rest easy with him week over week. He's going to be a dog, and he's fine. But hopefully you had depth already because you gave up some depth.
Yeah. Well, hey, this was a good episode. As a reminder, tomorrow's episode, it comes out, I think, either 10:30. I don't know when exactly. Do you know when our cafeteria episode comes out tomorrow?
4 a.m.
Oh, it comes out 4?
4 a.m. Eastern. So, I mean,
if you're up at 4.
Bro, if you're on the West Coast, if you're in California or some shit, like, you can listen to that at 1 a.m. on tonight.
Crazy.
Tonight, you could be listening to that at 1 a.m. So
we did, Felipe did his power rankings. I did updated playoff picture. Matan, we did guess the all-purpose yards in the NFL right now. I don't think you'd guess the top 10 at all.
Crazy.
And then Jack did guess. We played another guess the team. And then, Thursday, like I said, another Fantasy Live. We'll have Upper Hand Fantasy. Check out Upper Hand Fantasy on Instagram. He'll be in the office, and we'll be talking football. We'll do a lot of questions, a lot of trade-specific questions. Thursday night will be a start-sit at 5 o'clock. Friday will be our predictions episode, and then hopefully we can see you Sunday at 12 o'clock for our live pregame show ahead of Week 3. As a reminder, go to thegameday.com/promotions, anything DFS. Felipe, parting words of wisdom. Go.
Parting words of wisdom is this. Very important. Very important. Like this. Take this with you and like hold it in your soul.
Here we go.
Give us a rating on Spotify and Apple.
Oh, goodbye. Sign me off. Take us away. 5 stars. 5 stars.
Please.
Only. Please. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.